Lou, in common with baseball fans all over America, I greet you today. For many years, you covered first base for the Yankees. You were in there every day, no matter how many runs they were ahead or behind, giving all you had. You will live long in baseball. And for generations to come, while boys in America play baseball, they will point to your record with pride and satisfaction. I congratulate you.
Every human life has an overstory and an understory. And the overstory is the compilation of the ordinary experiences that we have day to day to day to day. A few characters in every generation also have a very potent understory. Someone might call it archetypal. It's a way of saying that someone is a witch, a hero, a healer, a prophet. These are all ways of saying what you're doing has much wider implications, and we can explain ourselves to ourselves by understanding your story.
It could be said Lou Gehrig was the perfect champion for the American ideal. Loving son and devoted husband, ardent worker and captivating performer. On the baseball field, his body, what it looked like, what he could do with it, long inspired comparisons to a god. But it would be the revelation of his humanity, grace in the face of impending doom, that would place him among the immortals of sport and the country's modern history.
Gehrig today is this picture of integrity, of honesty, of hard work. He's the simple guy who goes out there and plays hard every day. I feel like he's what we want baseball players to be, what we want our boys to be. He's this picture of wholeness, wholesomeness. It's a very American image that he represents.
Well, it's funny, they gave the name the Iron Horse, but for me, it's always felt like he's a rock. He has consistency. He's something that you never have to worry about. It's different than just like reliability. It's almost like perfection writ long over a period of time.
Well, I want to congratulate you on your wonderful career in playing 2,000 games without missing a game. And I hope I'm around here when you play your next 2,000.
Thank you very much.
You've done a wonderful job, and you should be congratulated, and I'm sure that you're going to continue for a long time to come.
Thank you, Joe.
The fact that Gary Cooper played him could not possibly be more perfect, because they both kind of stand for this American, almost Western, which is funny for a guy from Manhattan, but this almost Western idea of being taciturn and stoic.
Joe, you better send someone in for me. I can't make it anymore.
You sure you want it that way?
Yep.
Lou Gehrig today, the things everyone knows about him is that he had this incredible streak, that he played in 2,130 consecutive games, that he died too young of this disease that's now named after him. We often forget that he was also one of the greatest hitters of all time, and certainly that if he'd played a few more years, if he hadn't been struck down by this disease, his numbers would be off the charts.
He played his last game more than 75 years ago, but he remains the statistical standard to measure any first baseman by, and one of the very best players to ever take the field. 493 career home runs, combined with a lifetime .340 batting average. Only Babe Ruth and Ted Williams have numbers as impressive in each category. As the sport's prototypical cleanup hitter, Gehrig drove in more than 150 runs in a season, a record 7 times. And as the Yankee captain, the class and dignity he personified established an enduring model for generations to follow.
If you think of what the Yankee professionalism, that stoicism, that captain, that's all from Gehrig. All links start somewhere, and that is Gehrig being that person. No one would model themselves after Babe Ruth. They would die if they modeled themselves after Babe Ruth. Gehrig is the guy you want. And anytime you see interviews with players, they always said that, like everyone followed Gehrig.
He was our leader. Everything he'd done, why, was only for the good of the Yankees. We won and lost with him, because when he went horse collar 0 for 4, he felt that he was responsible because we might have lost that game, that he might have not got the base hit to drive a run in or something like that. That's how serious he was about the game, and that's how good a leader he was with the team. That's why I think why we went on to win so many pennants, because we looked up to Gehrig.
No other franchise has that. Really, no other sport has that. Today, athletes would spend millions of dollars to try to manufacture the persona that Gehrig has. That's what you want. You want to be this taciturn professional that everybody loves and is all things for all people. Handlers make billions as a whole industry just trying to be like Gehrig.
The flawless image was born through his approach to the game and his team. And it would be crystallized through the tragedy that ended his life.
Gehrig remains this incredible icon, and in part it's because he dies young and his image is frozen in time for us, almost like a movie. The image of Gehrig is so pure, so he really is like a figure out of mythology.
Gehrig must have seemed old-fashioned at the time. You know, Gehrig is he's got a code that he lives by. There's a sense of duty, of servitude. He's a knight. It's Camelot in a lot of ways.
It's curious to me how often the mythology of Camelot, the world of King Arthur, the golden age of knights with hearts of gold, has played in American culture. It's at the heart of the Kennedy myth. This was very deliberate mythologizing.
We love this idea of these sort of old-fashioned rules that you know, in our messy real lives are hard to obey and hard to follow. We love the idea of a knight. Like, he's here literally just to be perfect and to serve.
The natural appeal of sports, their drama and majesty, turn our greatest athletes into some of our greatest heroes. And what they accomplish can matter so much to us that we see their stories as metaphors for our own life experiences. To understand how that striking transformation from athlete to symbol occurs, a wide perspective is needed, one that illuminates elements of their narratives that go far beyond any feats on a field.
When a book, an epic story, a film, a political movement, or a sports hero burrows himself into your imagination and provokes you to ask, why? Why am I obsessed with Luke Skywalker or Mozart or Lou Gehrig? It's helpful to go to the archetypal stories to see what behavior is coming back again and again and again and again with every generation. So I look at a Gehrig in baseball, and I immediately think of some of these old heroes. There's a Percival. There is the story of Achilles.
When you study different mythologies from all over the world, and you ask yourself, what is the common characteristic here that makes all of these disparate phenomena worthy of being called myths? The most powerful common factor that you hit on is the fact that they're all sacred ideas. That idea is unquestionable, it's self-evident, it's latent within your perception of the world. Balder, for the pre-Christian Norse peoples, was a god who was, in a sense, the animating intelligence of life at its peak. He was so radiant that it was even said that he gave off light. Like Balder, Lou Gehrig was taken from the world of the living in his prime, at the very height of his career and just his life as a whole.
The American mythologist Joseph Campbell had a great breakthrough in terms of perspectives on mythology. It's the one story of the hero who has accepted a call to adventure, some tremendous challenge, and through courage, help from mentors and allies and so on, takes on that challenge and overcomes a series of ordeals in order to do something not simply for himself, but for the world around him. This is how we enter into the whole way to understand heroes, including baseball stars, in that there is one story that everybody is trying to live, and that is a search for self-knowledge.
It speaks to something timeless within the human condition and the condition of all living beings, in fact. And our modern age is no exception.
Campbell once said, "The myths aren't dead. The myths are alive and well." Odysseus himself is standing on the corner of 42nd Street and 5th Avenue waiting for the light to change. If you have a mythic way of looking at life.
When you think of myths, myths are invented somewhere. And the thing about Gehrig is Gehrig didn't know he was creating a myth. Gehrig didn't know he was creating the Lou Gehrig character. He was being Lou Gehrig, which of course makes him that much more mythic.
As far as the world was concerned, he looked like the golden boy. He had a beautiful wife, and he was a great player. He is that icon that he can face death and still do it with great optimism. But who is he? Well, we need to look a little deeper to figure out why he behaved the way he did and how come he was able to rise to the occasion.
Visiting ruins of ancient civilization has been a pastime, a source of fascination for people since the ancient Greeks. We're sitting here right now in front of the stadium of ancient Olympia. People have been coming here since around 1250 BC. Even the ancient Greeks were coming here to find out what their ancestors were like. Why? We want to know where things began because that's where the meaning comes from. For sports stars like a Lou Gehrig, we only understand the later man, the ball player that everybody loved at the end, by studying his origins.
It's June 1903 in New York City when Henry Louis Gehrig, the son of German immigrants, is born. From the start, his young life will be defined by the difficulties his family faces in trying to make a better life.
Gehrig grew up in astonishing poverty with a mother and father who did their best to take care of him, but were really struggling. He was one of 4 children, and he was the only one who survived. The loss of those siblings was huge for Gehrig and for Gehrig's mother. It turned Christina into a tremendous worrier, and she worried that she was going to lose her last surviving child, so she smothered him with attention. He was never allowed out of her sight, and he loved her, and he wanted to do everything to please her.
By contrast, as young Lou grows up, his father Heinrich spends more and more time at the local bar than with his struggling family, only strengthening the bond between mother and son.
Dad seems to be really absent, and so you can understand why Mom becomes so much more important to him, and we already understand that he's so important to Mom because this is her only child.
Eager, even desperate to keep her only child healthy, Christina feeds him to excess, and to please his doting mother, Lou eats everything put in front of him.
He was just fatter than anybody else. As a kid, his nickname was Fat. It was blunt, to the point, and humiliating, and Gehrig felt bullied. For Gehrig, I think childhood was not a joy. There's no vision by which he can imagine becoming a great success.
That lack of confidence, of self-assuredness, becomes an early and ultimately defining attribute.
What we start to see is that Lou Gehrig has trouble with people. Lou's not comfortable in his skin. Lou is just ill at ease and socially seems very anxious.
On the surface, he's always grinning, he's always smiling, he's always seems like a little boy. But underneath it, you can tell that there's this sadness and there's this insecurity.
You ever heard Gehrig talk about breakdown and talk about all these terrible things he'd been through and how hard it was? He just picked himself up and tried to make a better life for himself, and that's what we like to always imagine all Americans doing.
As a teenager, Gehrig follows his father to a local Turnverein, a German gymnasium. There he gains exposure to new possibilities, the results of hard work and dedication.
Gehrig finds that he's not just fat, he's stronger than the other kids. He can do more chin-ups and more push-ups. And the more he works, the stronger he gets. And he loves this. He feels this addiction to it, and it becomes really a central part of his life. Because it gave him one area that he had absolute confidence in himself. And as a young man, it paid off for him because he found that there was a desire for big, strong men on the high school football team and on the high school baseball team. And suddenly, a lot of the teasing stopped. He wasn't fat anymore.
Harnessing the same dedication to the ball field that he used to transform his body, Gehrig will develop into one of the finest baseball talents New York City will ever see, becoming a star at Commerce High School and leading his team to the Inner City Championship to be played in Chicago.
There's a classic mythic moment in the hero's journey of Lou Gehrig when he gets the offer to go to Chicago. His mother tries to hold him back. She's worried for his safety, but she also is suffocating him. She doesn't want to let him go. It's just like that in the Percival story. His mother takes him to a dark forest, and he grows up protected from the real world when Percival has this message, this beckoning of destiny. This is what's called archetypal behavior, when you are in this net of powers that's much larger than yourself.
Gehrig convinces his mother to allow him to travel to Chicago, and the experience offers him a glimpse of what the game can change for him.
Gehrig hits a grand slam over the outfield wall onto the street. That was so amazing to see a high school kid hit the ball that far that he made all the headlines. The newspapers are calling him Babe Gehrig. It was really his first moment of fame.
Self-esteem is based on real accomplishment. And this is a real accomplishment. It's not transformative, though. You don't become a chatterbox. You don't become cool with girls. You don't all of a sudden forget everything else that's kept you limited before. But it's a window for someone to say, maybe there's something else besides the world that I know.
After graduation, Gehrig enrolls at Columbia University, where his baseball legend will continue to grow. While Columbia is a prestigious school, it is also a safe choice considering it's just a 10-minute walk from his family's apartment on 8th Avenue, and his mother is employed on campus as a maid at a fraternity. Here in college, he continues to astound on the ball field, but still struggles with the pressures of social interaction.
You've got to remember that Columbia was an Ivy League school where a lot of kids came from very expensive boarding schools. They were dressed a lot better than Lou, and he's wearing dirty sweatshirts and worn out pants, and probably, just heightens his insecurity.
It just confirms and is that self-fulfilling prophecy that I don't belong. This is someone with real skills and yet still feels so uncomfortable.
He wasn't looking for dates, he wasn't going to parties. He was playing ball, going to his classes, and then going home to help his mother clean up the frat house where she was paid to work. He became more famous because he was playing so well and he was hitting these incredibly long home runs, but that fame never translated into a greater sense of self-confidence for him.
But in the spring of 1923 comes an opportunity to stake his life, his livelihood, and his future on the game.
Paul Critchell, the scout, sees him a couple of times and is impressed mostly by his hitting. He writes to the Yankees and says, "I've seen the next Babe Ruth." The Yankees offered him a contract, and he suddenly had a choice. Do I finish school or do I go play for the Yankees?
Life is moving in one direction, and then comes a call to adventure. Most people shirk it and just go back and live a safe life. That's human nature. But we turn to heroes because they reveal to us in a crossroad moment the courage that it requires to actually move into a larger realm.
It's 1923 when Lou Gehrig becomes a Yankee. 2 years later, he'll famously replace Wally Pipp at first base. A streak begins, and that beginning is not lost on a man who knows how much can be taken away.
Gehrig kept the box score from that first game in his wallet for the rest of his life because that was his chance, and he wanted to remind himself that it could end at any time. This goes back to his Germanic, the way he was raised, where working hard gets you results. He was going to stay in that lineup every day and not give anybody a chance to take his job.
With a working man's approach fueled largely by fear, Gehrig's talents reach full bloom in 1927 when he emerges as a central piece of perhaps the greatest team in baseball history, matching his larger-than-life teammate blast for blast at the plate.
Babe Ruth has been the home run king for the entire decade. Nobody comes close. And suddenly here's this kid, Buster they call him, who's hitting home runs as fast as Ruth.
Hello, Babe.
Hello.
You know me, don't you, Babe?
I can't place your face, but your shadow is very familiar.
I'm Lou Gehrig. Now do you remember me?
Remember you? After the past summer, I'll never forget you.
Portrayed as the Babe's sidekick, Gehrig in reality is unable to and uninterested in matching Ruth's flair for showmanship.
They're yin and yang. You have one person who's not thinking before they speak, and you have one who's thinking way too much before words come out of his mouth.
What is one of the most common faults in batting, Lou?
A very common fault is keeping the arms too close to the body, like this. The result is that the batter is not ready to hit.
Even the media at the time was very frustrated about this. You know, they were used to Ruth. Like, Ruth would call them in and go drinking with them and take them out to dinner and get them girls. Like, Ruth was the perfect source for these guys. Gehrig was not like that. He was standoffish. He was quieter. He was, frankly, less fun.
He knew he could never be like Ruth. He didn't try to copy him. He didn't try to go out and follow the parties and pick up girls. It just wasn't him, and he was not going to push himself out of his comfort zone. And it wasn't on purpose. It's not like he was trying to maintain his brand or avoid angering anybody. He was just shy.
We think of social anxiety as people just being shy. And so if someone is shy, well, then how can they get up at a baseball park and stand and hit a ball? Everyone's watching them. Well, what really is going on is that they're pathologically self-conscious in things that they don't have skill at. And what happens is very often with these individuals that they avoid those situations.
He really preferred not to sign autographs. You know, he would go out of his way sometimes to sneak into Yankee Stadium. He just really liked to be left alone. He was not comfortable, maybe not confident in himself. Growing up poor, I think he felt like it was very important to make a living and very important that he just work hard and work every day because he really wants to help take care of his parents. He wants to see them live a better life.
It's a desire that the success of 1927 allows him to fulfill, bringing him the means and security he's been yearning and striving for.
Gehrig has made enough money to actually buy his parents a home, and he describes it as the happiest moment in his life. Not winning batting titles, not winning championships, but doing something for his parents.
He doesn't have to worry anymore about whether his mother and father are going to work. They never have to work again. He buys this lovely house in New Rochelle and gives his parents the master bedroom, and he takes the kids' bedroom across the hall. He's 24, 25 years old, and he's going to live at home.
Even back in those years, it's unusual for a man still to be living at home. Here, when we look at Lou Gehrig, he did find something that gave him passion and something that he could work at, and yet he still doesn't find the mate. He still doesn't find the group of friends that he can be intimate with. And so, in some ways, he has delayed development.
At the heart of the wonderful round of stories in the Arthurian legends is the search for the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is a spectacular metaphor for eternal life, immortality. If you find the Grail, they will be talking about you forever. Percival faces a challenge to come close to the Grail Castle. And the first couple of times he approaches the Grail Castle, he does something that is always wrong for the hero. He wonders, what are people going to think about me? This is a really destructive moment for all people. Rather than following your own heart, you pull back and you're not yourself. Gehrig is a young hero who is protected by his own mother. He does nothing without her advice. And as long as he's attached to her apron strings, he remains a boy.
Lou wanted his mom around all the time, and she actually went down to spring training with him every year. She went on some road trips, and he wasn't embarrassed about it at all. You know, maybe he should have been, but he wasn't.
Still, as the bachelor approaches 30, he cannot ignore the notion that his mother's pervasive role in his life will need to change if he hopes to find a new kind of happiness.
Gehrig would confess about some of his feelings about how he might like to settle down and might like to meet a woman someday, but he was worried that it would hurt his mother's feelings. You know, he's starting to wrestle with this. He's maturing somewhat, and maybe he's ready to try to push out of his comfort zone. Eleanor Twitchell was a Chicago girl. She hung around with a kind of a racy crowd in the 1920s. When the Yanks came to town, she'd often go to parties where the Yankees were invited. At one of these parties in 1932, she meets Lou Gehrig. Before he knew it, Gehrig was smitten. It's really almost as if Gehrig has seen this life raft.
He recognizes something in her that he actually needs. That's boldness. It's accepting his role of a hero. In the story of Percival, he misses the Grail Castle the first couple of times, and then on the third attempt, the mythic third attempt, he acts out of his pure heart, he's able to see the Grail.
This is a key moment for Gehrig because he's almost 30 years old, he's single, he's never had a really serious girlfriend before, and here's this girl who really seems to like him, and he's got to make a decision. He wakes up in his hotel and he decides that he's going to go for it. He goes to the place where she works and finds her and asks her to marry him.
We have to start thinking about what anxiety does to you. That A, you found someone that you really have a positive feeling about. They may have features that are absolutely different than yours, meaning that they seem remarkably courageous socially. And you also know that if you give this too much contemplation, it will be sabotaged. If not by mom, by your own anxiety. You'll start overthinking it. So it's one of the healthier things that Lou does. Amazingly, his future wife says yes.
Ma Gehrig does not think that the Twitchells are good enough for Lou. And Eleanor stands up to Ma Gehrig and says, you know, he's mine now and I'm going to marry him.
It's an extraordinary moment because finally, in the wink of an eye, he turns from a boy to a man.
Lou and Eleanor are married in September 1933 and move out of his parents' house to a place of their own soon after. Lou Gehrig has found his mate, and now together they set about to reshape his public persona.
Here we have a coach, basically, who tells you that you can do it, and slowly but surely is putting you in more and more social situations that you're succeeding at.
She says that he has to recognize the responsibility that he has towards the fans and the sports writers. He grows because she is nudging him along, not to become her vision of him, but to become himself.
In becoming himself, he is at last embracing his celebrity, even making appearances in film. And by the mid-1930s, his profile as the unquestioned leader of the vaunted Yankees, who never misses a game, is rising higher than ever as well.
People are really paying attention to it. His nickname now is the Iron Horse because he's so reliable, just keeps going and going and going. And Ruth is starting to fade, he's getting a little older, and Gehrig is really carrying the team. He's named the captain, and this is a huge moment for him. And this is really when the Yankees become the Yankees. They become this staid, serious, conservative organization under Gehrig's leadership. He's happy with Eleanor, he's getting out in the world. So these are really the glory days.
This is the way I've always pictured it. Nice and quiet, peaceful, no excitement, no crowds.
He says, you can't buy the kind of serenity that I have in my life now. He's finally happily married. He's happy in his role as the Yankee captain. This is a rare moment for an athlete. And yet it's also mythic. It's got an element of Camelot because the moment just can't last.
So few people in history, modern and mythic alike, have experienced what it must have felt like to be Lou Gehrig in his prime. In the Norse tradition, there is the story of Balder, the god of light and purity, nonetheless shadowed by darkness.
Balder was the animating spirit of life at its peak. Every being who reaches the height of his or her existence is in some way manifesting Balder in this perspective. And Balder began to have ominous dreams that foretold his death. They showed him that he was destined to die, and that there was nothing that he or the other gods could do about it.
Eleanor wondered if Lou had a premonition about his own death. They went to an opera. It was Tristan and Isolde. It was a tragic opera, and the lovers die in the end. And she turned and saw him sobbing.
Why? Why would a big strapping ball player at the peak of his career, the peak of his life, be so emotionally distraught watching an opera?
The peak of life is to be cherished and celebrated when that's reached, but that has to be done in the knowledge that it won't last forever, and sooner or later it will decline, it will fall.
The fall for Gehrig begins at age 35 during the 1938 season, when his most trusted asset, his body, begins to betray him.
He complains that he's got some cramps in his legs, his hands are sore after swinging the bat for a while. In the off-season, he goes and sees doctors. The doctors have no idea. They just tell him that it must be a bug. He doesn't know what to do, so he shows up for spring training. And if you look at the pictures of him in spring training in 1939, you can see this is a different man.
You saw writers talking about how, wow, he's hitting the ball exactly the way he always does. It's just popping up, and it's just not going very far. And it was as confusing to him as it was to anyone. To see him taken away from him gradually with no explanation, it was something about, like, it was a reminder that, like, wow, he actually is a human being.
On May 2nd, 1939, after 2,130 consecutive games, Gehrig offers his submission.
McCarthy says, I'm not going to be the one to pull this guy out of the lineup. He's got to do it himself, because Gehrig has been so good for so long, and he's meant so much to this team. When the decision finally comes, McCarthy says, okay, I respect you, and that's it. Gehrig never plays again.
The ultimate irony of Gehrig is, this is a guy that's based in consistency and based in stoicism and being there every day, but he was a shooting star. Like, he was gone like that. This was a guy that was supposed to always be there. That was the foundation. That's what we valued about him. So to have him gone like that right after he finally had the spotlight to himself, it's just another reason the story is so powerful.
Gehrig heads to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, in search of answers. The one he gets is devastating.
Upon arrival, the first doctor who sees him has some familiarity with ALS. His mother had died of ALS. And as soon as he walks in the room and sees Gehrig with his shirt off, he says, I think it's probably ALS.
Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, a neurological disease that causes nerve cells to gradually break down and die. It's little known at the time, but its outcome is certain.
They knew, everybody in neurology knew that ALS was fatal and that most people lived no more than a couple of years with it. Gehrig knew that this was the end.
For the fans, meanwhile, it's stunning to see a man who epitomized consistency and reliability taken from the public stage so suddenly.
Gehrig was like a train. That's why they call him the Iron Horse. You don't really notice how reliable your train is until the day it doesn't show up. That's when they realize that not just playing every day, but playing so well, being a decent person, just doing everything he could to help his team day in and day out for 13 years, that was something they were going to miss. Some of the Yankee reporters, some of the guys covering the team, suggested that they should do something to honor Gehrig. They should retire his number. It was the first time a number had ever been retired in baseball. And that they should have a special ceremony for him. They should give him gifts and make a big deal out of him. And the Yanks thought it was a great idea. They decided to do it on the 4th of July, between games of a doubleheader with the Washington Senators.
It's a ceremony unlike any ever seen on a ball field. with more than 60,000 fans joining luminaries including members of the already fabled 1927 Yankees to pay tribute to the Iron Horse.
1927, Lou was with us, and I say that was the best ball club the Yankees ever had.
There were speeches, there were gifts presented, and Gehrig stood there, you know, with his hat in his hand, listening and shaking hands and thanking everybody. Gehrig really didn't want it. He asked if he could be excused.
For Gehrig, you have to like set him aside and be like, we're honoring you now.
For many years, you covered first base for the Yankees. You were in there every day, no matter how many runs they were ahead or behind, giving all you had. You will live long in baseball. And for generations to come, while boys in America play baseball, they will point to your record with pride and satisfaction. I congratulate you.
Lou Gehrig is 36 years old, and he's dying. The display of adoration and outpouring of emotion, all for him, is overwhelming.
The announcer, the MC, said Mr. Gehrig has asked not to speak. Thank you very much for coming. And the crowd started chanting, "We want Lou, we want Lou." You get 61,000 people on their feet, waving their hats and demanding that Gehrig say something. Lou could never say no to anybody, and certainly to authority figures. Finally, Joe McCarthy comes up to Gehrig and whispers in his ear, "Come on, you gotta do this," and gives him a little push in the back.
When you see Lou Gehrig walk to the microphone and accept the responsibility that he has to say something to the fans, in that moment, he becomes who he always was.
For the past 2 weeks, you've been reading about a bad brag. Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. When you look around, wouldn't you consider it privilege to associate yourself with such a fine-looking man as is standing in uniform in this ballpark today? That I might have been given a bad break, but I've got an awful lot to live for. Thank you.
I find it amazing that the ancient Greeks used the same word for actor and athlete, agonist. Both were dramas, and both had the power of showing you how to act in a moment of crisis with our ideal self.
He is able to not only keep a stiff upper lip, he makes other people feel better. And that's heroic. And he does it with such courage and grace that he shows us the model of behavior.
You remember the pauses. You remember today, I consider myself, like it's almost like a psalm. It feels like it has verses. It's such a short phrase, but the cadence is perfect and it pauses at just the right times. And again, the reason it pauses at the right times is not because Lou Gehrig was this gifted orator. It's because it's this legitimate, genuine moment.
Only those few sentences of his 277-word speech are preserved on film, but today it's still recognized as one of the greatest in American history. A man proclaiming so movingly his luck.
Luck is one of the most mythic words of all. He's acknowledging, on one level, that he feels blessed, but he's actually calling on the gods and goddesses, as they would have said in ancient Greece. He's acknowledging that there's some other force at work.
Despite the fact that he's been diagnosed with this terrible terminal illness that is wasting him away and stopped short this incredible streak of accomplishments in his professional life and in his personal life, to be able to look at that and to say, you know, I'm the luckiest man in the world, you have to have that really expansive perspective that you have when you're that close to death.
He doesn't know how long he's got to live. But whatever time he has left, he wants to make the most of it, and he wants to be thankful for that time. He resolved to do something with his life, to look for a cure for ALS, and he began making himself a subject for any experiment, any doctor who said they wanted to try something on him. He participated. Then he went to the mayor of New York and said, I need a job.
Gehrig refused to mark time to the end. He took a position on the New York City Parole Board, sworn in by Mayor LaGuardia. He would devote his last years to men who were, in his words, less fortunate than himself.
There are many of us who throw in the towel. And this guy, again, shows us this true grit and this real strength of character to say, I am still going to help others who are less fortunate than me. It's the height of psychological health, because when you're able to do that, you don't feel sorry for yourself, and you're still making great contributions, literally till your last breath.
Less than 2 years after his iconic speech, with Eleanor at his side in their Riverdale home, Lou Gehrig succumbs to ALS. He is 37 years of age.
A great warrior, cut off in the prime of life, being buried in Valhalla, the Hall of Heroes for the Vikings, is a wonderful ending to an heroic life.
The word Valhalla, as it's spelled in Old Norse literature, means the Hall of the Fallen. This is a particular modality of the underworld, where the people who are especially favored by Odin go when they die, mostly kings and heroes, the choicest warriors to fight alongside him.
There's a motif in many mythologies around the world that the heroes never die. There may be an illusion that they fall in battle or they're felled by a disease, but the expectation is that real heroes live forever.
Because of his death and the way that got people to reflect upon his life in a new way, he became much more than just a baseball player. He became an archetype. When you make the kind of realization that Lou Gehrig made, the tragedy is not death. The tragedy is dying without living life to the fullest, without having that understanding of just how beautiful and amazing life really is.
We think of Gehrig as this courageous man first and as a ball player second, and that might have bothered him because he was so proud of his hard work and his accomplishments as a ball player. At the same time, it's important because it reminds us that our heroes are human. These are people with flaws, these are people who get sick, these are people who die. And Gehrig injects this humanity into the game that is often overlooked. And despite his great strength, despite his great accomplishments, there are some games that you cannot win.
There's still no cure today for the disease that now bears his name. But in the summer of 2014, the search for it received an unexpected and colorful boost.
2, 3!
He was absolutely determined that something good come from his experience. And I think if he saw that this disease was still out there, he'd be horribly sad. But the fact that people are fighting for a cure, that people are doing ice bucket challenges and still giving money, and that the fact that it's known as Lou Gehrig's disease helps raise awareness, helps raise the profile of this fight, I think he'd be really proud of that.
It is indeed tempting to wonder what Lou Gehrig would think of the legacy he left behind. The man who came from so little and overcame so much. The hero who never flinched in the unforgiving face of mortality.
in spite of his anxiety, and in spite of clearly some delayed development, the strength of character that this man had and the way he dealt with adversity makes him an icon. And that's why, decades after he's gone, we still think of him.
Lou Gehrig is the control group. That is perfection. We will always strive for that.
Modern America is voracious, gorging itself on more of everything. Gehrig represents an antidote to that. The virtue of loyalty, the virtue of endurance, the virtue of humility. That means a lot in the modern world when we have to wake ourselves up with stories of grace and gratitude and courage.